How does it sound? It's better. Welcome, students, staff, and faculty to the Hickman Diversity and Inclusion Lecture today. We are grateful to you for joining us today. We will begin our meeting with a prayer offered by BYU students, Luke Sanchez. Luke, thank you. I didn't understand a word you said. However, I believe that you bless us and also offer a wonderful prayer. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. Well, the College of Family, Home, and Social Sciences mission statement says a lot of things. But one important component is our belief in belonging and how that applies to the whole entire human being. Part of the missions reads, we educate students to recognize and value both diversity and unity, with the purpose of promoting the dignity and divine nature of all God's children. The Hickman Diversity and Inclusion Lecture, named for and made possible by the first dean of our college, Martin Hickman, is part of our efforts to achieve that mission. This award is presented annually to a faculty member who is outstanding in increasing this understanding of belonging in their scholarship, their teaching, and their citizenship. The 2023-2024 award recipient is my friend, Dr. Lilly López, an assistant professor in the sociology department. Before we introduce Dr. López, we would like to invite Saraya Mosman and Ellie Jacob to share the musical number they have prepared for us. It is titled, In This Very Room. Saraya will be singing and Ellie will be accompanying her on the piano. Thank you so much. Such a beautiful number. Thank you again, Saraya and Ellie. One more time. Thank you. They brought spirit to us. Dr. López's accomplishments are varied and very extensive. We have invited Dr. Haley Pierce, an assistant professor of sociology, to introduce Dr. López and her lecture to us today. Dr. Pierce.
Dr. Jane Lilly López is an assistant professor of sociology at BYU. She received a bachelor's degree in urban studies from Stanford University, a master's degree in evidence-based social work from Oxford University, and a master's and doctoral degrees in sociology from the University of California, San Diego. Dr. López studies and teaches about issues related to social inequality and social policy. Her book, Unauthorized Love, Mixed Citizenship Couples Negotiating Intimacy, Immigration, and the State, published in 2021 by Stanford University Press, examines the intersections of immigration, citizenship, and family in the law and in everyday life. Dr. López has been a member of the college's Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee since its creation in 2019. And one of the things she has loved most about her time at BYU has been her participation in this welcoming, loving, and supportive community. I am absolutely honored. The song did it, and my love for you, Jane. I'm absolutely honored to consider Dr. López a friend for life. She's a thoughtful note writer, a vocal advocate, a loyal friend, and a wizard with words, which we'll hear today. She is as good as they come, and we are so lucky to hear from her today. So with that, Dr. Lopez.
Are you going to change the slides? These are just my notes. I asked for tissues, and now you know why. Thank you. Thank you so much, Soraya and Ellie. That was so beautiful. Thank you, Luke, for your beautiful prayer. Thank you, Haley, for being an amazing friend. And thank you all for being here. What a pleasure. Okay, I have shaky hands, and I wasn't planning on having a mic where I could move, but I'm going to give it a try. So thank you for your patience with me. Some of you may not know that many academics, including me, feel a significant level of anxiety when we are asked to share a brief bio to be read when we are introduced as a speaker. In addition to wondering if it's unimpressive or boastful, it always feels like it doesn't quite capture who we are as a person. I recently attended a presentation in which the invited speaker offered an alternative introduction based on who she was rather than what she does. And so I would like to do the same for you today, given that who I am and what I have experienced in life has directly influenced the message I'd like to share with you. So hi, my name is Jane Lilly López. I am a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a friend. I'm a sociologist and a scholar who studies belonging, and I seek to understand how people find and sustain connection within the social and legal contexts of their daily lives. I'm a singer and a book lover. I love exploring emotion and experience through music and story. I also love to sleep, as my family will attest. I'm opinionated and outspoken. I'm a champion for love, equity, fairness, and belonging. I have always felt a deep, desperate desire to belong, and yet I am most often convinced that the person I truly am is not worthy of love, acceptance, or belonging. And though I often think I'm the only person who feels this way, I know many of us struggle to believe that we are enough and that we are worthy of love and belonging just as we are. Humans are deeply wired to seek connection, to find community, and to feel a part of something bigger than ourselves. This quest for connection can lead us to true belonging, but it can also result in us settling for fitting in. Brené Brown explains the difference between belonging and fitting in this way. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be accepted. Belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. She describes fitting in as the greatest barrier to belonging because fitting in says, be like them to be accepted, when belonging says, this is who I am. I hope we can make a connection. Belonging and fitting in are both processes that require input from ourselves and from others. Our actions matter, but others with whom we seek belonging or fitting in also have the power to accept or reject our efforts. This means that we are responsible for creating a community of belonging by embracing our authentic selves and making room for others to belong as their true selves. I would like to focus my message today on how we can foster a community of true belonging through our acceptance of ourselves and others as we are. I grew up in a community where adults and children worked tirelessly to police the boundaries of belonging. As a pretty nerdy kid who loved to read, thought competing on the math team was fun, loved singing and acting in school plays, and also had big opinions and ideas that I rarely kept to myself, there were lots of character traits I could blame when my peers rejected me. While I was sometimes tempted with the chance to fit in during my childhood, I was never truly offered a space to belong. I was not right. I was not enough, or maybe I was too much. But I deeply felt that message and the shame of it, of being different, of being unwanted, of being unworthy of love, many times in my childhood and youth. It left deep scars on my heart and soul, scars that I carry with me to this day. Sorry. At the time, I thought that only outcasts and rejects like myself felt inadequate. I was certain that the mean girls in my school lived lives free of self-doubt, insecurity, and fear of rejection. But life has since suggested that they struggled with many of the same feelings that I have. When there's a long list of specific traits required to fit in, even the people who check all the boxes must still police their own thoughts and actions to make sure they don't accidentally disqualify themselves from fitting the mold they've helped create. As Dr. Eileen Kennedy Moore, a clinical psychologist, explained, trying to fit in makes us feel anxious and constantly on edge because we sense that if we slip up, we're out. Looking back, I can see that we were all suffering within this culture of exclusion in my high school and in my childhood community. There was room for all of us to belong and to thrive. And while some people did a better job at fitting in than I did, we all had to make compromises with our true selves if we wanted to fit into the very specific mold that promised but rarely delivered belonging. As I said in my introduction, I'm outspoken, so I'm going to be blunt with you. BYU often feels a lot like my high school, where there's this feeling that we're all being evaluated and measured against an ideal standard most of us can't meet. I've heard a lot of people describe it as a checklist, a seemingly impossible to satisfy list of ways to be, primarily focused on outward, easily observable characteristics and behaviors that serve as very imperfect measures of our inner lives, faith, fears, dreams, and potential. I rarely encounter members of the BYU community who feel like they check all of the boxes. Yet we continue to engage in boundary making and boundary enforcement that directly limit our own and others' belonging. Why do we do this? When seeking to foster belonging, it seems to me we face two choices. One, expend our energy drawing borders around belonging and enforcing them by making sure some people are never allowed in. Or, make room for everyone to belong. My message today is that there is room. There is room for everyone to belong at BYU. There is room for all of us to be different in our belonging. What does that mean? Well, it means that I can be a math-loving, book-devouring, loudmouth, opinionated woman who can sing you all the lyrics of Wicked and belong at BYU. And it means that you can belong here too, regardless of whether you have any identities or interests that overlap with mine. You do not need to prove that you can defy gravity in order to be good enough to belong here. And I do not need to stop singing or reading books or voicing my opinions to belong here. You belong here, as you are, and I belong here too. We are already enough. No proving ourselves or changing ourselves is necessary. Conforming to a single standard is not necessary either. In fact, research shows that we learn better, design better solutions to problems, and more effectively achieve individual and group goals when we study, work, and live in more diverse environments. Heather McGee's book, The Sum of Us, demonstrates this beautifully. McGee notes in the book's conclusion that diversity is our country's biggest strategic asset. The research has borne this out in education, jurisprudence, business, and the economy. Put simply, we need each other. Our differences have the potential to make us stronger, smarter, more creative, and fairer. Consistent exposure to and relationships with people whose experiences and perspectives differ from our own make us better people. So rather than trying to pressure people to fit in by conforming to a specific notion of who or what is good or right, we should welcome difference and celebrate the fact that there are many paths we can follow in our quest for happiness, growth, fulfillment, and connection while still being part of this university's unique community. We can learn from each other, discover new things about our own passions and dreams, and create a space for true belonging when we embrace our differences. Everyone is different, and there is room for everyone to be different. Once we make room for our differences, we begin to create space for true belonging. There is also room for everyone to be imperfect. In communities and social settings that promote fitting in over belonging, perfectionism is also present. According to Psychology Today, perfectionism is a trait that makes life an endless report card of accomplishments or looks. When healthy, it can be self-motivating and drive you to overcome adversity and achieve success. When unhealthy, it can be a fast and enduring track to unhappiness. What makes extreme perfectionism so toxic, the authors continue, is that while those in its grip desire success, they are most focused on avoiding failure, resulting in a negative orientation. They don't believe in unconditional love, expecting others' affection and approval to be dependent on a flawless performance. They go on to describe some of the traits of perfectionism as follows. Perfectionists set unrealistically high expectations for themselves and others. They are quick to find fault and be overly critical of mistakes. They tend to procrastinate a project out of their fear of failure. They shrug off compliments and forget to celebrate their success. Instead, they look to specific people in their life for approval and validation. As I was drafting this talk, I initially described myself as a recovering perfectionist. But as I read through this and other descriptions of perfectionism, I realized that I have not really overcome any of my perfectionist tendencies yet. Ouch. But while I am trying harder to accept and embrace my imperfections, but a part of me still feels like everything I do needs to be perfect. And as you can imagine, this impulse has made preparing this talk very fun. Learning Spanish as a missionary was a particularly potent challenge to my perfectionism. Although I was good at memorizing new vocabulary and meeting learning goals in the classroom, among others who, like me, were learning the language for the first time, I found myself tongue-tied when surrounded by native Spanish speakers. I was so afraid to misconjugate a verb or say words in the wrong order, let alone say the wrong word, that I spent months hardly saying anything at all. Even when I was desperate to share a thought or feeling with the people standing in front of me, my fear of failure immobilized my tongue, and all I could do was smile or shrug or cry. It was only after I had no choice but to talk that I finally realized that making imperfect connections with people was much more valuable than avoiding others in an attempt to hide my deficiencies. When I was focused on avoiding the failure of speaking a language imperfectly, I could not see the loss I was experiencing by missing opportunities to express love and build relationships with people who were ready to embrace me in my imperfection. Once I accepted the inevitability of imperfection, I found, to my great surprise, belonging, acceptance, and love, rather than the rejection and judgment that I feared. In order to create a space of true belonging, we need to push back against the tendencies of perfection, to expect perfection of ourselves and others. Giving ourselves permission to be imperfect and love others imperfectly will open more possibilities to love and be loved as our true selves. And giving others grace as they learn to speak the language of love and acceptance with us will release them from the weight of our expectations and give them room to belong as their true selves. Love and acceptance are not just attributes, they are skills that we have to develop through work and effort. That effort, though, liberates us and others as we shed the burdens of perfectionism and judgment and embrace the restorative, redemptive power of love. There is room for everyone to be imperfect. Perfectionism can also hinder our ability to achieve and sustain success, individually and collectively. Though research has shown correlations between perfectionism and positive characteristics like motivation and conscientiousness, a meta-analysis of perfectionism in the workplace found that perfectionistic tendencies can also impair employees at work through negative effects on mental health like burnout, depression, and anxiety. The study results showed that performance and perfectionism were not related to each other. Perfectionists are not better or worse performers than non-perfectionists, leading the authors to conclude that perfectionism is likely not constructive at work. As students, staff, and faculty at a high-performing and demanding university, many of us got here because of our drive for excellence, the high expectations we set for ourselves, and the unflappable work ethic we developed as we worked to achieve our goals. But these same tendencies can impede our progress towards success in the university setting if they lead us to avoid taking risks for the fear of failure, encourage us to see others as our competition, and/or push us toward anxiety and burnout. Perfectionism and competitiveness can threaten our development and our connections to others when we begin to see the success of those around us as a threat to our own ability to succeed. In addition to carefully guarding the boundaries of belonging, my grade school peers and their parents were extremely competitive. Every 6 weeks, when we would receive our report cards, students would go into a frenzy to find out everyone else's grade and see who they'd done better than or worse than. This constant comparison and competition made every less than perfect performance in the classroom, in sporting events, on the stage, everywhere, feel like a life-changing failure. And it turned all of my peers, my potential friend group, into the greatest threat to my success. I think we were all convinced that every accomplishment someone else enjoyed equated to our own personal failure. These were not great conditions for developing lifelong friendships or creating a community of belonging. Luckily for me, my college experience was surprisingly the complete opposite. No one ever talked about grades, and this helped me develop rich, meaningful connections with others and enjoy my classes and my peers without feeling in competition with anyone but myself. In graduate school, though, my competitive streak threatened to reawaken. This is mostly due to the fact that graduate students are, to a certain extent, in competition with their peers. We're applying for the same internal and external research grants, teaching assistantships, and summer stipends. The pools of funding are limited, and we were all trying to scrape by on very low wages. Under these conditions, it can feel like your classmate's success is equivalent to your own failure. And not just your failure, but an existential threat to your ability to support yourself financially long enough to finish your degree. Thankfully, Rowan Arar was in my graduate school cohort. Rowan, now Dr. Arar, is a brilliant scholar whose enthusiasm for research and learning is unmatched. She is sharp and funny, and fortunately for my grad school cohort, one of the most compassionate, encouraging, loving, empathetic people in the world. Every time contention and competition had an opportunity to break out in our cohort, Rowan was there to snuff it out. She cheered everyone on, celebrated everyone's successes. She dropped everything to help us finalize a grant proposal or prepare for an important presentation. And even when someone else won an award or grant that she had also applied for, she was genuinely thrilled for that person and ensured their success was properly celebrated. As she regularly reminded us, success for one of us was success for all. Rowan's unwavering support and encouragement for each of us transformed our cohort into the most supportive and successful cohort our graduate program had seen in a very long time. Now, years after we graduated and moved all over the world, we still have a group text thread where we share and celebrate each other's victories and offer support and encouragement through our different professional and personal challenges. We are all better and more successful as a result of this community that Rowan was instrumental in helping us create. From this experience, I learned that we have so much more to gain personally and collectively from treating each other as friends and teammates rather than competition. As a result, my competitive nature has, for the most part, fallen away. With this new perspective, I've become much more suspicious of narratives of competition and zero-sum thinking. As a mother, I have grappled with how to push back against the pressure of always needing to be the best and finish in first place that my sweet third grader, Lilly, is already starting to feel. She will often come home and tell me that she was the first to finish an assignment, got the most points in a learning game, or read the most books of anyone in her class. Sometimes she will mention that she was second or third best, and I can sense in her tone that she worries that anything less than the best will not be enough. While I am so proud of Lilly for all of the amazing things she does every day, I want desperately for her to grow up knowing that there is room for everyone to succeed, and that the incredible gifts that she has to share with the world are too great to be measured and ranked against those of her peers. She, like each of us, has something to offer that no one else can give. I want her to know that she is worthy of love and happiness just as she is. She does not have to earn her worth nor prove her value. I also desperately want Lily to understand what her wise Aunt Rowan taught me. There is room for all of us to succeed, and celebrating, supporting, and encouraging our peers will make our lives and relationships richer and will help us be more successful too. Research I have conducted with a recent BYU sociology graduate, Faith Williams, supports these personal observations and experiences regarding success. In interviews with dozens of immigrants living in Utah, we asked them what they think success means and whether or not they consider themselves to be successful. Regardless of their circumstance before and after migration, their age, their education level, the amount of time they have lived in the US, or anything else, nearly every interviewee described themselves as successful. And while their definitions of success varied, one element was constant across interviews. That success means being able. Success for all of them was in part about self-determination, agency, and being able to make choices that shape their present lives and future possibilities. Framing success in these terms can be empowering and produce positive feelings for us, even in the face of ongoing structural challenges like discrimination based on race, gender, nationality, sexuality, or socioeconomic status. The structure we are socialized into as children in school, in which there are constant lists ranking performance from first to last for every activity we engage in, does not actually reflect how life works as adults. We do not have to be in first place, to have the best grade in everything, to be the CEO or the university president, to have successful, fulfilling, meaningful careers and lives, and to have an impact on the lives of those around us. Rather, having the power to choose our path forward and seeing how our own decisions and desires have shaped our lives, the careers we choose, the families we create, the friendships we form, matters so much more for our own self-described success and happiness. These principles hold true at BYU, too. Universities are strange places. While we must set ourselves apart from others in order to receive an admission or employment offer here, we will gain the most from our time in this incredible setting from collaborating with and supporting others, rather than competing with them. There is not a curve on graduation that requires some students to fail. Every single student who enrolls at BYU can graduate. In fact, a huge part of our job as faculty is to help students do just that. Likewise, faculty and staff do not have to compete with their colleagues to keep their jobs. There is room for all of us here. A space has been set aside just for us, for each of us. And no one else can take it from us. Not only are we not in competition with each other, we all benefit from the successes of other members of the BYU community. BYU's reputation and the value of your BYU degree rises with the achievements and accolades of other BYU students, faculty, staff, and affiliates. We should all celebrate each other's achievements, support and encourage each other along the way, and seek opportunities to collaborate and create together, because a success for one of us is a success for all. There is room for everyone to succeed. Building a culture of collegiality and supportive interdependence is another important step toward creating a community of true belonging. Finally, there is room for everyone to belong. When we create a community of true belonging rather than fitting in, there is no limit on the number of people who can belong, because there is no limit on how we can belong. If a new person belongs, that does not mean that my chances of belonging decrease or that I'm more likely to be pushed out of belonging. In fact, my research suggests our own sense of belonging grows when someone we care about is welcomed into our community. Likewise, the exclusion of someone we love from our community of belonging makes us feel less belonging. For more than a decade, I studied mixed citizenship American couples with one US citizen partner and one non-US citizen partner. And I examined their experiences of belonging or exclusion as individuals and as families. My research started when my dear friend Camille called to tell me that her husband, who who lived in the US since he was 6 years old, was going to be deported. I did not know how to respond because I didn't know that this was a thing that could happen. Initially, I thought there must be a mistake. But as I researched the issue, I realized that this is absolutely a thing that can happen, and it does happen. I was devastated for Camille and her family as I watched Camille pack up their lives and prepare to move to a country that was completely unfamiliar to them. As you can perhaps imagine, Camille took her husband's rejection and expulsion from the US personally. How could she feel belonging to a country and a society that had physically removed her family from its ranks and barred her husband from ever coming back? As Camille put it, when he was deported, so was I. And it's like, sure, they didn't kick me out necessarily. I can come back whenever I want, but they took away my freedom by separating me from my husband. Her husband's deportation forced Camille to choose between her family and her country because, she explained, there's no way we can be together unless we leave the US. That's the thing. They've arranged it so beautifully so that we can't stay where we feel home is. Christian, another US citizen I interviewed, expressed similar feelings, responding with an unwavering no when I asked whether or not he and his wife Sharon considered themselves an American family. Before an error on Sharon's citizenship application resulted in the cancellation of her permanent residency and a lifetime bar from legal status in the US, they both felt proudly American, individually and as a family. But Sharon's permanent rejection from legal status in the US had devastating consequences for them as a family, destroying their American identity and sense of belonging to the US along the way. Now they identify as an undocumented family that was rejected by the United States. And they explained to me that their official rejection by the US brings the divisive power of the border into their social interactions with friends and neighbors. For me, the concept of the border is ever present, Sharon explained. Something that is a physical barrier, geographically, turns into a relational barrier, a very real and a very painful one. So I guess it's kind of something that has its own life in everyday encounters. When you have people that love you and care about you, and they don't mean any harm, but they will start talking about those illegals and saying things like that, and they don't even think that that could be you. And then the border becomes a real barrier between you. Do we erect similar barriers on campus that intentionally or unintentionally make others feel like they do not and cannot belong? Do we make comments about someone's race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, weight, clothing, hairstyle, bank account balance, or expressions of faith that create barriers around belonging? What is this boundary making meant to accomplish? And how does it make us feel? Do I feel more belonging here when I exclude others from belonging? When interviewing couples about their sense of belonging, I found that the collateral effects of acceptance or rejection go both ways. Partners of rejected individuals feel that rejection personally and directly. And partners of individuals who are officially accepted and embraced by the United States through permanent residency and citizenship feel that embrace personally, too. U.S. citizen spouses feel even more American following the formal legal acceptance of their spouse by the government. Their non-citizen spouses express similar feelings of belonging in the U.S., too, often seeing their Americanness as inevitable as that of their U.S.-born spouses. Interestingly, and somewhat counterintuitively, acquiring legal status in the US also enhanced these couples' social integration in their other country of membership too. Obtaining legal status in the US provides these families with the ability to freely travel within and outside of US borders, and the conviction that their status as American families is set in stone. These families can thus embrace both of their countries and cultures without feeling conflicted or afraid that belonging in one place will preclude their ability to belong in the other. In the context of belonging at BYU, I think these findings should give us hope. Everyone in this community has already been officially accepted here, through their admission as a student or their offer of employment as staff or faculty. We have all been approved to join this community, and we have all accepted that invitation to come here. No additional tests of loyalty are necessary, or proving that we joined this community for the right reasons. We all applied to be here. We were all invited to come here, and now we are here. That is enough. And belonging at BYU should not interfere with our ability to belong in other communities that matter to us. If true belonging means to be who we are and to bring that authenticity of self into our community, there is no need to alter or abandon our identities in order to fit in. In fact, when we belong as our true selves and when we allow others to belong as their true selves, our campus community will be richer, stronger, and more powerful from the diversity of interests, ideas, and experiences that we bring. Again, there is room for everyone to belong. And our own sense of belonging will increase as we make room for others to belong to. So what are we waiting for? If there's already room for everyone, what can we do to embrace that space and move from a tightly guarded model of fitting in to a community of true belonging? We must start by revising and deepening our understanding of community. The feminist writer, activist, and scholar Bell Hooks said, "Community is the coming together of a group of individuals who have learned how to communicate honestly with each other, whose relationships go deeper than their masks of composure, and who have developed some significant commitment to rejoice together, mourn together, and to delight in each other and make each other's conditions their own." Based on this notion of community, here are a few steps we can take toward creating a community of true belonging at BYU and in the other communities in our lives, including our families, our congregations, and our neighborhoods. First, we must learn to communicate honestly with ourselves and with each other. This means embracing our authentic, imperfect selves and making the conscious decision to take up space. We have to allow ourselves to take up space before we can make space for others to belong. We need to be okay with having needs, even as we acknowledge and accommodate the needs of others. We need to stop trying to be the person we think others want us to be and get comfortable with the incredible, diverse humans we already are. And we need to be respectful and gracious toward others, seeking to understand them in their difference rather than compel them to conform to our own beliefs and values. Second, we must sacrifice our fears of imperfection, failure, and rejection, and be vulnerable to those around us. Fitting in requires putting on a mask, and many of us have gotten comfortable hiding behind that mask. As Brené Brown has said, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. Staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience connection. And while abandoning these fears and embracing vulnerability may feel like a sacrifice, I believe we will find beauty for those ashes and the oil of joy for our mourning when we open ourselves to the love, experience, and empathy of others. Third, we must value connection over individual achievement and believe that there is room for everyone to succeed. As a community of individuals who have, on the whole, promised to mourn with those that mourn and comfort those that stand in need of comfort, I know we are committed to caring for others in our moments of weakness and heartache. But I think we can do more work also to rejoice together and delight in each other, to accept and embrace one another's unique gifts, and to celebrate our successes as well as sit with each other in our pain. We can be a whole that is greater than its parts, but only when we carry and support each other in the worst and best of times. Finally, we must make others' conditions our own. In other words, we must not content ourselves with inequity and injustice, nor seek our own advancement at the cost of our communal well-being. Our history, past and present, is rife with examples of the devastating consequences of boundary making and othering. We only need to open our eyes and our hearts to see the depth of human suffering unfolding around us, in our community and around the world, with deep roots in identity-based exclusion. We must recognize the value of community in our lives by pursuing ends that benefit all, rather than just ourselves. We must recognize the humanity and inherent, infinite worth of every person on earth, and we must choose to preserve their rights and their lives above all else. By doing this, we acknowledge our infinite interdependencies, choose love over self-interest, and make space for true belonging. In short, we need to truly love ourselves and others. When we are willing to be vulnerable and love unconditionally, we can experience the redemptive and restorative power of love and bask in the joy of true belonging. There is enough love for all of us. There is enough room for all of us. Room for everyone to be different, to be imperfect, to succeed, and to belong. If we lean into this hope and let it take root in our hearts, we will create the community of true belonging that we so desperately crave. And we will experience the pure joy of understanding what it truly means to belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, for your beautiful remarks. We don't need to prove ourselves to be accepted. We can be who we are. And thank you so much for reminding us that we can be who we are, and there is room for each one of us. We are so fortunate to have you with us today and to have you on our faculty. We presented Dr. López with her award in our college ceremony in August, but please join me now in thanking Dr. López for her presentation and remarks again. For Dr. López and all for joining us today. And we love you, we care about you because who you are and such a beautiful soul.